Yes, none. Just in case someone shows up.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Thursday, February 23rd. Mr. Cook, could you lead us in the pledge of the flag?
Yes, ma'am.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. So tonight we have one agenda item, and that's the Assistant Town Administrator interviews and appointments. First up is Anthony Ancelotti, and after that we'll have Lindsay Pope-Dahlberg. Just as a recap, though, kind of history how we got here, at our last November 16 special town meeting, there was an amended town bylaw to split the Assistant Administrator Finance and Budget duties across two positions. The first change is that the Assistant Administrator Finance and Budget becomes the Director of Finance and Budget to really focus on the finance and budget aspect of the job, obviously. And the second is to hire a new Assistant Town Administrator. So the application process is kind of coming to an end here. Over 123 applicants applied for the job. 8 were invited for the round 1 interviews with the department head team, including both chiefs, police and fire, department DPW director, town clerk, assistant administrator, finance and budget, and the town administrator. The round 1 team came to a unanimous decision to recommend the 2 candidates we'll hear from tonight to the Board of Selectmen. The appointment of this position is subject to the Board of Selectmen's approval. So why don't we get started? Anthony, if you want to come join us a little closer. Yeah, actually, that would be great for the mic purposes. Yeah. Okay, so why don't we get started off with hearing a little bit from your side, Anthony. We have your resume and your cover letter, but why don't you talk to us a little bit about yourself, your background, anything you want to share with us?
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight. I also want to thank the interview committee. As I was saying to Keith, as much as you're interviewing me for this position, it's as an opportunity for me to get a sense of the town by through the interview panelists, and I have to say I was very impressed with them all, so I'm pleased to have this opportunity to be here with you tonight. So you had an opportunity to review my resume, but just to recap a little bit, my education is, I have a bachelor's degree from Salem State University, with a business administration and accounting concentration. 3-4 years ago, I was a participant in the Mass Municipal Association and Suffolk University Graduate Certificate in Local Government Leadership and Management, where from there I received my graduate certificate, but then I realized that I wanted to advance in this career, in this field. So I enrolled at Suffolk University and I received my master's in public administration. It's been a year now. I'm also certified by the Inspector General's Office as a Massachusetts Certified Public Purchasing Official. So a little bit about my experience. For the past 12 years, I've been working for the town of Brookline, where I'm responsible for the preparation and business activities of both police and fire department, which is approximately $30 million, just shy of $30 million. Made up of about 350 employees, both police, fire, civilian, dispatchers, in 5 different collective bargaining agreements. Prior to Brookline, I worked for the sheriff, actually, of Middlesex County. The then sheriff of Middlesex County asked if I would join his senior management team and create an internal audit department, one that didn't exist. So I took that as a great challenge, and I left Department of Revenue and went aboard there and shaped what they still have it today, the internal audit function for them. I got the opportunity to develop the policy. I also got the opportunity to do programmatic audits as well as financial audits. Also working closely with the state on state audits that when they come and inspect the county facilities. And prior to that I was working up for the Department of Revenue in various different positions. I associate myself with two memberships, professional memberships. It's the International City County Managers Association, and I'm also a member of the Massachusetts Municipal Managers Association. And for the past, this will be my second year, I sit on the committee, the Future Managers Committee. Part of my functions with Brookline, as I mentioned, is the preparation of the operational as well as the capital improvement plan for both the police and fire department. Also responsible for all revenue that both entities collect, which comes to about $8.5 million, mostly coming from parking meters and parking tickets, as you can imagine being in the city. Also responsible for general billing. The police department bills out false alarms. Also, we get the detail surcharges from police details, which we do about $4.5 million a year. And also, the fire department does inspections, multiple dwelling inspections of 6 units and above. And we also collect on master boxes. A few of the projects that I've had the opportunity to work on is similar to what you're doing with your fire department expansion project. We are going through right now a fleet maintenance and training facility, a brand-new facility that's going to be in the back of one of our stations. It's a $4.5 million project. One of the first things, too, when I started in Brookline, I took my tour of the facilities with the chief, and I heard him say that, geez, Anthony, we have these old buildings that were, some built in late 1800s to early 1900s, and, the trucks are getting bigger and heavier, and we just need something else. So I put together a study and put it in the CIP plan for about $50,000 to look at our existing buildings. That study really paid dividends for us, because what we found is we had 3 major areas of concern. First one being structural. So we actually had a couple of our stations that have basements. The apparatus was just too heavy for that, so the engineers found that one morning the fire department was going to go down and answer a call, and that truck is going to be in the basement. So we had to put together a $3 million project to shore up the floors and other structural deficiencies in the stations, as well as some life safety issues with sprinkler systems and some mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and so forth. One of the things that I really take great pride in is that, over 80% of budgets are human capital. And having the opportunity to work where I am, I have 5 collective bargaining agreements, which I get to interpret every day and analyze for men and women in the police and fire department. So it's the police, the fire, our dispatchers, our AFSCME school traffic supervisors, and then our AFSCME clerical staff. I don't get an opportunity to sit at the table. I wish I did have an opportunity to sit at the table, because sometimes different benefits are negotiated, which end up not being really what they intended for. And for an example, 5 or 6 years ago, the fire department negotiated a educational incentive award program. It's a great idea, but the only problem is it wasn't defined on what would be an acceptable, accredited school. So they ended up finding an online school, which necessarily wasn't accredited through New England Association of Schools and Colleges or another regional association like we have here. So we needed to now get out of that, because it was costing us some money, because we're paying for them to go to school, as well as once they get their degrees. So it was a mistake, but it was a costly mistake, because now in order to get that and strengthen up the language, we obviously had to give something up. And again, that just happened right now without getting into too much details, because it's a pretty big issue. But there was a benefit that wasn't costed out, and it's projected right now for about a $300,000 deficit, and next year a $1.1 million. So it's an issue that we have to tackle, and it's consuming a lot of my time to try to find a way, because that's a big number, as Bonnie can tell you, to try to fix. So it's so important in collective bargaining, I think, and I always wanted that seat at the table. I always said somebody financial should be sitting at the table that knows, because, the police and fire department are two of the contracts in town that are very complex, and in those little things could mean a lot of money. So I know I'm rambling, but I'll give it back to you guys to ask questions.
Maybe one more general question, just why do you want this position?
I want this position. I realize that being on the state side and then coming to local government, that what we do impacts the community so much. And it really gave me more pleasure working in local government than in the state, because I really felt that I was making a difference. And, but yet, in the current position, I'm not really able to play a major part in shaping the community. I want that opportunity. I don't want to see those mistakes that we've made. In my current employer, I want to be able to avoid mistakes like that. I want to make sure that in the community that I work, that I'm going to leave that community a better place, and I'm going to strive to make it the best possible. So I think that this is an opportunity in Littleton where it's a growing community. There's a lot of exciting things, I think, going on here, and I think that I really can be part of that.
Okay, well, that leads into my first question anyway, so now the board can ask you some questions, and I'm just going to go first just because you literally are leading into my first question, and that is, what have you learned about Littleton?
In my research, I found that Littleton, since really its inception, has just been a growing community. The population just continues to grow as the last census in 2010, and I think it's going to continue to grow. I had the opportunity to look at the budget, just shy of $50 million. I had the opportunity to review your goals and objectives, and the first thing that really was an interest to me was the master plan. I thought that was going to be a great opportunity to shape this community into the year 2030 and beyond, and really put some great emphasis into the areas that they touched upon with economic development. You have a great project that I went over there before I came here because I wanted to look at it as the point. And, it's very impressive. It reminds me of where I live near in Linfield, it's the marketplace. So it really has that same feel to it. And I think Keith called it the centerpiece of economic development for Littleton. And it truly is something that you should be proud of. And I think that you can use that to market future projects, which I know is also a goal of yours to do some marketing of that.
Okay, very good. Taking a look at your resume, under the Middlesex Sheriff's Office, founded the Internal Audit Department, and you mentioned that as you were giving your introduction. Talk to me a little bit about when you say department, what that means. Does it mean the people in addition, or just kind of the processes, or talk to me about what that is?
That was just the department of one. So when the then sheriff took over, he was inheriting a department that had some kind of corruption issues going on in the civil process office. There was issue with inmate finance with some misappropriations of funds, and he totally wanted to make sure that never happened on his watch. So he wanted to, I should say, bring me aboard to develop those policies and to make sure that the people know that there's a set of eyes watching. So we completely revamped the civil process. We got yearly audits of them in separate, and the audits that we have to do in the state level with the single line audit. Also there, as I mentioned, we were inspected by the Department of Corrections twice a year, and it was the inspection process wasn't taken seriously, and they got low grades, could never become accredited correctional institution. So he wanted to change that mentality. So I went in there and we did pre-audits, and we kind of changed the philosophy of the employees from not really caring to taking ownership and caring. By the time I left, we went from a laughing stock of Department of Corrections to getting exceeds expectations. So we really were able to change and transform the mindset of the employees and the department heads there.
Very good. Okay, maybe one more question from my side. I'm also interested in the, now in your current role, serves as the business finance liaison between public safety departments and other town departments, including the TA, finance director, comptroller, procurement, and human resources. Talk to me a little bit about what does that mean, business finance liaison between all these parties?
That means whenever there's an issue that goes on in police and fire, the first person they come to is me. So if it's a financial issue, they'll come to me. They don't go to the chiefs. They kind of took that out of the chief's function. I was the first business manager in Brookline. They never had that before. The administrative assistants used to muddle through paying bills for the police and fire chiefs, but it didn't work. They had some issues. One of the issues was police details. So before I came aboard, they weren't collecting very good. And the town was faced with writing off $500,000 of uncollectible police details. That was huge. So the then finance director, Steve Cirillo, asked me to take that on, take it away from the police, and work that. Proud to say right now I have a 99% collection rate of $4.5 million. So I'm only writing off maybe $10,000 a year. And that's only if I can't lien their property, or we take them to small claims court. So the ones that I really can't collect are people that just contractors that are gone. So I'm proud of that effort, yeah.
Very good. Thank you. All right, I'm going to pass it to you, Vice Chair. You're up next.
Really? All right. All right, so I prepared a few different questions, but one of the ones you talked about the mistakes that were made with collective bargaining, so it kind of led into one of the questions that I had prepared, and it's kind of a two-part question, and it has to do with I realize those mistakes weren't yours. You came in kind of after the fact, and you had to deal with them. But here's the question: do you believe in the saying, "It's okay to fail. It's a great learning opportunity"?
Yes and no.
So let me give you the follow-up questions. Maybe that'll help you to frame your yes or no. If yes, if no, why not? But if yes, tell us about a time when you failed professionally and what you did learn from it.
You know, I'm not afraid to make a decision. If need be, I'll make that decision. And you know, I think not making a decision and letting things hang is not good. It leaves uncertainty. So, but I'll evaluate, and I like to always check with my peers, with other department heads, run it by other folks, and say, what do you think? You know, I'm not afraid to pull the trigger and make that decision, but I also realize it's pretty good to bounce something off somebody else, either in town or sometimes it's one of my colleagues in another community that we stay close with through these associations that I belong to. So, so I think that you have to make decisions. Time that I was wrong. So our deputy superintendents were pulled out of the police union and put as on a department head level. So when they did that, they needed to buy out their comp time, because obviously you couldn't have comp time in that level that they were coming to now. So that's how we handled it. And then one of the deputy superintendents retired and another one came aboard. So I took it upon myself and said, geez, he has a lot of comp time that we should buy him out at the captain rate and not the deputy superintendent rate. So I did. I bought him out. That's not what they wanted to do, though, for whatever reason. And so we had to reverse it. It was, I took it upon myself figuring that we were going to be consistent, but we weren't. And I don't know the reasons why they came to those decisions, but I talked to that employee, and I just said, Steve, I apologize. I thought that's how we were going to do it. He's like, no big deal. I appreciate your call. And yeah. I said, just leave the money in your account. We're going to take it back out.
Don't go to Aruba.
Yeah. So that was one of those ones where I made a decision and it wasn't the right decision, I guess.
And so as far as the lesson learned there is
You know, the lesson learned is you try to reach out to people for an answer. Sometimes you don't necessarily get an answer, so I think that's why I want to get to that next level, because I don't want people to be in that situation. So it's always good to bounce something off somebody else, though. That's the lesson.
I like the fact that you're basically talking about collaboration. I certainly appreciate that, and I think that's a sign of strength, not weakness.
I think you get more by working together. You know, I was telling them in the first interview that we had 3 ladder trucks in town. One was a reserve, and one was a 95. Both of them failed a structural integrity test, which means they needed to come out of service. And now the town of Brookline was faced with just 1 ladder. Certainly is not an ideal situation, because that ladder needed some work too. So we were in trouble. And our new ladder wasn't going to be in for another year and a half, so we needed to solve that problem. So we have an acting fire chief who is new. Me being more hands-on for the last 12 years, I was trying to help him to understand and what we should do. So I said, I think we should work together with the fire union, because we've certainly made mistakes along the way by not including them. I think when you have buy-in from the union, the membership, we work together on it. We were able to look at our options, weigh out a used fire truck versus a demo fire truck that PS had. We were using it for shows, and which is virtually brand new, but it also cost $890,000. But because we showed the advisory committee, the financial advisory committee, and the selectmen that our due diligence was done, we were working together, we all sat in a row, I did the presentation, we were able to get a reserve fund transfer for $890,000, which is, and it went unanimous with the Board of Selectmen as well as the FinCom, so that never happens. So, but I think that working together and being a unified front made the difference. It had, I think it gave the faith that the Selectmen had in us, as well as the Financial Advisory Committee, that we did our homework on this.
Thank you. I've got a number of questions, but in fairness to my colleagues, I don't want to say something that they may say. So
I know,
if you
I
wanna
felt the
open it-
same way. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. No, no.
All
All right, sure.
I mean, if you're okay with us kind of bouncing back and forth.
Absolutely. If I'm talking too much,
No,
please,
no, you're fine,
throw a
you're
pen
fine.
at me if you need to.
Don't worry, I'll throw something at you. So I have a few questions too. Can you explain to me what you feel are the pros and cons of the Baker-Polito Municipal Modernization Act? You can
Purchasing.
start either with the pros or the cons, it's up to you.
The pros, I think the purchasing guidelines, increasing that helps municipalities. I still have some issues, not just with that act, with other parts of unfunded mandates that happen, that I'm always in touch with Sean Cronin, because we work together. He gave me the mistake and gave me his cell phone, so I always call him up. You know, for instance, one of the things that bothers me is that for police details, for a state project, they can waive a local government's surcharge, 10% surcharge. But yet, when my cruisers go through the Mass Pike, I get charged a toll. So those things drive me crazy with Sean. I'm like, Sean, we got to do something about this. This is wrong. How do you let them waive our penalties? Another, I think, a con to, and I'm not sure if it's part of the municipal act, is the public records request.
Whole new law,
Yeah, they were separate,
Is
yeah,
that separate?
whole new law.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a little bit unfair that what's passed on to us, but yet the legislature is exempt from that. So, it's a pet peeve.
You're not alone.
I know.
The numbers.
What's your perspective on implementing a multifaceted vision? You know, you're coming into a town that's very busy. As you stated before, you have the Master Plan Update Committee going on, that's gonna be a huge visionary document moving forward. How do you handle something like that?
You know, I think it's a lot of people working together on that document. So whatever my role is, whatever I'm asked to do by Keith or by the selectmen, I'll certainly embrace. But again, it's that collaboration that's going to be huge, working with various department heads and employees and also the community. Because I think the buy-in aspect of everything and letting everybody know what the visions and what the goals and what we see it this playing out is going to be important. Was there another part to that?
No, just how you deal with, I like the idea of collaboration and working through the entire process.
Strength of many.
You really have to listen. You know, one of the things that I like to do is listen and hear all different viewpoints, because I think that there's no bad questions, there's no bad viewpoints. I think that we need to listen to everybody's point of view so we can fully understand where they're coming from. So the blinders don't necessarily work in government, in my opinion.
Gotcha. How do this is one of your typical interview questions. How do you cope with the stress of the demanding duties and responsibilities of not only what you have, but what we're expecting of you? How do you deal with all that?
So in Brookline and working in public safety, it can be very stressful. It's like putting out fires all the time. So what I do is I like to hang around after work, and we actually have the fitness room in the police station. So I'll just go and burn off some stress there. Gives me an opportunity to de-stress, think of the situation. Then I go back to my desk and I may answer a few more emails after that. So I think it's important to clear your head sometimes, so you can think more clear on the issues.
All right, thank you.
Darrell, it's our statesman.
Yeah, I have a two-part question, and I reserve the right to maybe ask one if we have time. And it is hypothetical, but it has to do with the style of government. Say you take the position and you're less than 2 weeks into the position itself, and our town administrator takes a leave of absence for 6 months. He's going with Al Gore to work on climate control, but
This is a real.
It's going to
this is a real
Antarctica.
scenario.
It's on the phone.
But it's a 6-month leave, all right? You're here less than 2 weeks. Now you're the person in charge. Keith isn't here. I'd like to know what would be the first thing you would do and how you would handle that. And second thing, during this stressful time, which I imagine would be stressful, a department head comes to you during that time with a small personnel problem, all right? How would you handle that problem? Would you take the department head aside and say, you know something, work on this on your own, then bring it back to me? Or would you then say, you know something, let's work on this right now?
So in the absence, and God, I hope that never happens, Keith. But if it did happen, and he was to not be around, and I was asked to step into that role, obviously I'd want to speak with each one of you to find out what the issues are that Keith may have been dealing with, because maybe we really didn't have that much of an opportunity in 2 weeks to fully grasp everything that's going on in town. So I'd meet with yourselves, and then I'd also meet with department heads. I'd be looking over my left shoulder at Bonnie, because I know that she knows everything. But other department heads as well, to kind of get a flavor of what's going on, and then what we have to do to continue moving forward in a positive manner, just as Keith does every day. So wouldn't want to miss a beat, but it certainly would take some work, and yes, it would be very stressful to deal with that. But it's something that I'm prepared for. That's why I'm ready to jump into this role. And your second part question on a personnel issue, so if a department head was having a problem, I don't think I would just say, just go deal with it. I want to talk to them, I want to know what the problem is. We've all had difficult employees dealing with, and it's not fun, and it can be a lot of work. But to do it properly, you have to document. And depending on what the situation, maybe it's serious enough that maybe it's an issue where somebody has to be put on leave with pay or leave without pay, so, I wouldn't just turn somebody away without investigating what the facts were surrounding the personnel matter.
Thank you. And I'll pass on too. If it's this time, I'll ask another question.
And to our newest addition, Selectman Glavy.
Oh, okay. Let me be the first to say somebody always says, well, they've taken all my questions, but
That's why I stopped.
not true, actually. What do you what is your understanding of the job? It's new to us, but it's obviously new to you, too. There's the job description, and you've had your interviews to date. So given that, what is your understanding of the duties of the job, what you'd be doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, we touched upon that in the first interview. I mentioned during that interview that the job description was very broad. I think it encompassed everything. I think it may have even said I had to empty the trash barrels on Friday. I'm not quite sure.
Just, you have to leave the lights on.
Oh, that's it.
Make sure you turn it off, Billy's gonna come after, well,
But I realized in speaking with Keith that this was an opportunity where they could look at the skill set of the person that's going into that function and really mold that position somewhere around their strengths, but also around other areas as well. So I took that I know my strengths, I know, some of my weaknesses in that function, but I believe that my strengths can play into what we can define that position to be. So it's a new position, and the last two jobs that I took in Brookline, it didn't exist, my job. So I had the opportunity to shape that, and we did some great things, and continue to do great things. The job before that, in the sheriff's office, again, that was another opportunity to step in. It didn't exist. So I helped shape that. So, and I shaped those to the needs of what the departments needed. So, and I would do the same thing here. We evaluate really what the needs are, and then we'd attack that.
And I asked that, impressed by your budget, your background, your auditing background, your familiarity with municipal software, your collective bargaining agreement implementation. A lot of that stuff suggests the financial side of the house, which I could very easily see ourselves interviewing for the finance director's position. This is distinctly the other half of the house, so I wonder if you've given enough thought on that end that, this is being created to complement that part of the, administrative structure, and whether there's particularly, let me ask the question this way then, if there are areas of municipal activity, program areas, department areas that you have not previously been involved in that you'd like to get involved in?
I'll answer that part in a second, but to go back, so, yes, the financial is definitely, it's my strong point, but I've also had the opportunity to work on building projects. I've also had the opportunity to work on parking issues and deal with the Chamber of Commerce and the various associations that are in Coolidge Corner Association and Washington Square Association, because working with them and understanding what their problems was with some of our parking issues. So I really enjoyed that. So, and I don't get a lot of opportunity to do that. So that, in this function, I hope to have an opportunity to go out more into the public and to work on projects. Not like that. I don't want to bring parking meters to Littleton. I don't think you need them. But to that project management and working in the community, I really enjoyed that. And the second part of the question?
Just areas of interest that, you may not have had an opportunity to work in yet in municipal government that you were intrigued by, would want to expose yourself to.
I think it's dealing more directly with the public. Mm-hmm. I was behind those doors, and I dealt with employees all the time, but I cherished the opportunity to go out there and talk to some of the citizens at times.
Good.
Yeah, round two?
Yeah, could I do, so, in your opening remarks, you mentioned you're involved with the MMA.
Yes.
And you're on the Future Managers Committee.
Yes.
So that lends to the question, ultimately, you'd like to be a town manager, a town administrator, I would assume. So it's more around where this job fits into your career goals. So it's a 3-year plan, 5-year plan, whatever it is, we're just trying to find out where you're at as far as.
I don't have a plan. I look at this as a great opportunity. Just like Brookline, I got to be honest with you. I went in there with a plan. I figured, hey, I'll be there 3 years. It's been 12 years. There always was new challenge, and I think as long as there was new challenges to work on, then I'm satisfied. Do I want to get to a level of that one day? Yes, but I also, once I start a project, I like to finish it. I like to see it to fruition. So, I'm really just focused at the task at hand right now, and if given this opportunity, that's my focus. I'm not gonna say in 2 years I'm gonna run out, and look for something else. It's really, I think that there's a lot to do here. I'm hoping that this can be a long-term. I don't care. I'm not one, if you look for my resume, I don't bounce around. So, there's some anxiety with even leaving my current position as much as I want to get to this, because I don't bounce around. So, but, who knows, in 5 years, the ideal job opens up and maybe somebody calls me or something. I don't know. It's tough to say.
Okay. That's a fair answer. I have more, but
Anybody else have a follow-on?
I got one more. What drew you to town administration? What got you into the business?
I was on the state level and working for the sheriff. I just felt like I accomplished everything I needed to. And I'd known a friend of mine who then was the controller in Malden, and talking, and, he really said, it's really great working in municipal government. And so I made the switch. I applied from a newspaper ad and ended up in Brookline, but just loved the administration. Again, like I said, it's just the way that we impact, your lives, the citizens' lives, is really rewarding to me. I think when you're a government employee, you're not doing it because you want to get rich. You have to have some sense of enjoyment and really caring about what you do, and I truly do. So this is where I feel that I can have a direct impact positively on somebody's lives.
Thanks.
Very good.
Just quickly, we have a number of different boards in town, both elected and volunteers that are appointed. A lot of different personalities. How do you see yourself and style handling maybe a conflict that might be in between boards?
I think sometimes giving, like I mentioned, giving that lending that ear to somebody and let them have that time to vent, listening to their concerns, listening to concerns of maybe the other board, and then maybe realizing that we can meet somewhere and try to bring them together. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. But, I really would try to listen to both sides and bring them together, or at least let them understand the importance of what they do and what this other board does.
Thank you. I'll pass on. I'm all set. Chuck took all my questions.
all right, I'll throw a dot here. All right, so I'm gonna ask the question of relative to your existing position. Why are you looking to leave your current role with the town of Brookline?
It's just to get to that next level. It's just to get to on the senior level management level where I can have more of a say and be involved in some of the decisions that go on. Right now, working in my current structure, I'm limited till, plus I'm a civilian in a public safety atmosphere, which is very tough.
Okay.
So, but, this is what I've been studying for, is to get to this level.
Good, good, good.
I'm good.
Anything else you'd like to share with us or ask us?
I don't think so.
Okay, very good. I don't know what the procedure is. Are we done now?
You're done, and we can, the other next candidate is nearby. You
One
could,
more question.
yeah.
Don't go anywhere. I left some on the sheet, so.
What's your experience in writing grants? Because we've
that's a good
certainly
question.
found out how important that is to this town and how it's been neglected at times.
Yeah, we have a lot of grants. Like I said, combined for, I think in FY16, we had over $1 million in grants. $500,000, though, is that Brookline's part of the Urban Area Security Initiatives, which is the 7 communities surrounding Boston, so that's something that you could never get that. But a lot of the other grants are actually reoccurring grants, though. grants that you receive probably right now, your SAFE grant, your SAFER grants.
Click it,
your
ticket.
Click it a ticket, 911, there's the training grant, and then there's the PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point grants. Some of them are just reoccurring. The JAG grants, that's, a lot of that is make sure you fill out the application and get it back. But it's knowing about those. In my current capacity, I had the opportunity to work directly with those agencies, and I have contacts in Boston, I have contacts with State 911, Department of Fire Service. I've had the luxury of dealing with them, and just letting people, putting a face with the name sometimes helps. So we have a good relationship with those. So I would try to make sure that, first of all, we're aware of all the grants, and I would imagine that you are here, and you probably get a lot of the same ones. It's just a different level of funding. Being the second largest town in Massachusetts, we get a lot more funding than a community of just around 9,000.
Thank you. Let's throw one more at you.
Sure.
It's kind of a feel-good one. When were you the happiest and most satisfied in your job? And just give us some specifics, and how did the community benefit, or the agency, if you're with the state? Doesn't necessarily have to be your current job. So when were you most happy or satisfied in your job, and how did the town or the agency benefit from it? I thought that was a layup. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it is. It is, I take really great pleasure in really trying to work with different units in the police and fire department to understand their needs. And, sometimes the chief is tied up and doesn't get to hear all of the little issues that the members are having. So, I like going out there. I like talking to them. I have a good relationship with them. I have a great relationship with the union president. And, last night, at 6:30, we're on the phone, about budget issues. So I like to be responsive to them, and then I like to put that into the budget and, and get our staff what they need, like motorcycles this year. They really wanted new Harley-Davidsons, so, I put in for 2 new Harley-Davidsons. Chief didn't necessarily want the Harley-Davidsons, but I convinced him that on a trade-in, where it's almost like getting 2 for 1. So when being able to present that document and then getting it approved and knowing that they got what they want, it gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Helps morale and.
Helps morale, yeah.
And who doesn't want a new Harley?
Absolutely.
Just saying.
Yeah, there might be a couple of those in the budget. So there's a couple of years.
In some other community I saw where they wanted to bring in back the mounted patrol, so.
Good with that.
Any?
I'm gonna stop there.
You good? You good with that one? Any last questions? Going once, going twice? Okay.
Maybe just one, if you were offered the job, what kind of, how soon could you get here? It's good that you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because that means you care about your current employer.
Well, we have some serious budget issues that are going on, and we have a couple of meetings going on in the next couple of weeks, and, I really want to make sure that,
Sure.
that we get that resolved, and I don't know if we will or not. So, I want to make sure that I leave Brookline in a good situation, but I would, if I'm offered the position today, tomorrow, I'd be here Monday night if you wanted me to be at that meeting. So I would make myself available in off hours to start participating in the process.
Integrating.
Good answer.
Thank you for caring about your current
Well,
employer.
Brookline,
I do,
yeah,
I
that's
do.
important.
Means a
Speaks
lot.
volumes.
Hey, they were good to me, and, you have to be good back.
No, it's important. Shows some
Yes.
character.
It is.
All right, thank you.
All right,
so
thank you.
much. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
We want to take a brief recess?
Just leave?
Yeah, you can just
Cameras there?
go around.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, but good luck. Thanks very much. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Can we take a break from?
Yeah, we can take a break and we can reconvene.
Chris, we're gonna take a quick break before we see the next applicant.
Lindsay's here, the next candidate is here.
Yeah.
Hi, Lindsay, how are you? Nice to see you. You want to take a break?
Okay, welcome back, everyone, after a brief intermission for Thursday Board of Selectmen meeting, February 23rd. 23rd, yeah. All right, so just another recap on why we're here and where we've been. At our last November special town meeting, amended town bylaws to split the Assistant Administrator of Finance and Budget's duties into two positions. One would be the Assistant Finance.
The Director of Municipal Finance, the Director of
gosh.
Finance and Budget.
Thank you.
Yes.
Will be budget. I
The
could not think of
DFB.
the word. The Assistant Administrator
Charge
of
of money.
Finance and Budget becomes the Director of Finance and Budget. And then we hire a new position, which is why you're here today, for the Assistant Town Administrator. 123 applicants have already applied. There was interview rounds. We're here at the last round. Round one, there were 8 invited and interviewed by our department heads, including the Chief of Police, Chief of Fire, the DPW Director, our Town Clerk, our AAFB, and our Town Administrator. This team unanimously recommended 2 candidates, yourself and Anthony, who we just heard from, and you're here tonight. because the appointment of this position is subject to the Selectmen's approval. So we'll start off with hearing a little bit about you from your side, and then we're gonna go ahead and ask questions from our perspective. So why don't we hand it over to you for a little bit of an introduction? Tell us about your background, anything you want to tell us about your career. We have your resume, but go ahead and tell us in your words some of the highlights and why you want the position.
Great. So, to risk not being redundant on my resume, you guys can all read, so I'm pretty sure you got through that. And I have a lot of education. Obviously, I just went back to Harvard when I had a toddler because I just love education. I love training. I think it's a really great thing, both personally and in municipal life, to keep everyone kind of up to date because things are always changing. I mean, just recently the Municipal Modernization Act turned everyone on their heads for a good couple months. So, it's good to be able to keep on top of things. As far as my career goes, I had started college when I was 16 years old, so my career is a little bit longer than the average person. I went to Penn when I was 16, so my first job in government was when I was 19. And I've gone up and out ever since, kind of changing my roles and kind of forging what I wanted to do. And what I learned real quick was that state and federal were not for me. Municipal is exactly where I wanted to be. It was all the things that encompassed what I believe in and what I'm passionate about, which is having a direct connection to helping the community. So when I was in federal, I could kind of see it from time to time because I was very hands-on as a first responder. But then when I was moving into the more administrative end of Homeland Security, I got to start working at MAPC. And when I was working there, I did a lot of both state and regional, and then, of course, municipal work. And once I started seeing more of that municipal, it was the more I wanted that. So I did what they call the stint at DOR that everybody seems to have to go through at some point, and learned the basics of how the DLS systems are working and about how the towns are working and what they need and what they don't need, and procurement of those types of needs on large scale and small scale. I worked on OSD teams to help build state contracts on the side. I actually still get requests for those. I've been a keynote speaker and a panelist at state events to help discuss those things as well. And as far as moving on from school and college, I've been asked back as a keynote speaker at conferences at Northeastern, which is my undergraduate degree. So it's been a really kind of fun ride for me to be able to get to do a lot of these things. My one kind of mantra is, if it's interesting, say yes, because you never know if you'll get that chance again to do something so great, and you make the time for it. There's always time for things. You just got to figure out how you're going to put it in. So I did all those things, and I had a great time doing them. I'm in Lexington now, and I call, Littleton a little Lexington because there's so much in common. I mean, if you could just shrink Lexington, it's right here. It's such a great town. It's got a very wonderful kind of rural, bucolic vibe going on, but at the same time, it has a lot of accessibility, not only to highways, but to commerce as well, and that's rare to see in such a small community that could still somehow achieve that rural and bucolic idea about it. And that's what really drew me in to Littleton as a choice of someplace that I wanted to go. For me, I'm extremely picky about where I interview, if I interview at all. I had told Keith, if you see my head pop up for any job, it's because I've already done probably about 30 hours of research on the town itself, because I don't want to walk into some place that I don't want to be. We're in work a lot of the time more than we are at home. So if I'm going to spend my whole day here, I want to really be passionate about the place that I'm at and what I'm doing for that town and what I'm doing for those people. And everything about Littleton is so wonderful to me that I really do want to invest my time in there. I've even looked at the housing markets to see, hey, if I wanted to move my family here, what would that be like? What are the housing markets like? How are people doing here, as far as the housing market? Because there's two flip sides to it, economic and then obviously livability. We all know that, Littleton has been rated one of the best places to live, especially for families and children. The school system is wonderful, so it's kind of a no-brainer on those ends. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to settle into a spot where I can be there potentially forever and, be able to possibly raise my family there eventually and move, my family to that spot because that's where I want to be. That's where I want my family to be. So that's kind of how I got here.
Okay, great. And what I'm curious, in the housing research you did, what did you find?
There's actually a limited amount of housing to accommodate my family because I do have 3 daughters. And then I have, my husband and the dog and the turtle and everybody else has to come too. So with that, I kind of looked for 4 and 5 bedroom houses. So those are a lot larger. But the market's not too bad. There are, a handful or 2 of houses out there. There's probably a dozen or so. And then if you go out further, as much as like Lunenburg and things like that, of course it opens way up and prices are kind of all over the place, whether it be, Concord or Bolton or wherever you might be going. It's kind of interesting how it changes from town to town, even though they're so close. But the market's it's really good here, and there's so much building going on, of course, because you guys are doing so much work with that, opening up these spaces so that they can build more housing, that it's not only helpful, I'm guessing, on the...
Not trying to.
Through no fault of our
Don't
own.
blame us.
It's great on the tax and residential end.
I thought there was Paula Villa.
Yeah, right.
So it's great on the
Oh,
tax
boy.
and residential end, but also at the same time, it does open up all those houses to more people who want to move into the community, want to build on that community. And this is a very, what I would consider, lively community where everyone's very involved in town meeting. And I just love that. I know not everybody loves that. And I know not everyone wants to hear the yelling and the screaming at each other. And it might get a little, sassy there sometimes. But I definitely enjoy that. And I think it's, the passion that comes from being part of a New England community and having that town meeting that a lot of other people don't get the chance to have. I said, one of my favorite things about the town is that you still have King Street. And King Street to me is just so funny because even Boston did away with their King Street and then renamed another street King Street later on because they didn't want to be considered, being sympathetic to the British. But at the same time, this town did it, and they said, what, whether or not we're supporting Tory lifestyle or not, like, we want to keep our town the way we want to keep it, and there's nothing you can do about it, and so we're just going to do that. And that just is the epitome of what I consider New England politics. It's just, if this is what we want to do, we're going to do it, and we have good reason to, and, we're not saying we're one way or the other, we're just saying this is how we want to do our thing, and this is our town. And that is just such an amazing spirit to have, and the fact that it's still here even today makes me smile. Just when I, my GPS said King Street, and I just started laughing, because I was like, oh, I love this.
Well, actually, one of my first questions is what have you learned about Littleton? So you've answered that. Let me go into my next question. Just picking up on a point in your current role. Manage senior volunteer office staff for purchasing and finance. I'm curious about that role and what the volunteer office staff is like and how you manage them. So talk to me a little bit about that.
I love the volunteer office staff because they are the sassy people at town meeting. They come in and they get tax abatement, because they're doing volunteer work. And what they'll come in and do is they'll send me a list of who's available and who is willing to work in the finance department, which is not that many. They mostly want to work at like the recreation center, the senior center where they can hang out with their friends. So getting someone to be lured over to finance is a little bit difficult. But once we do, it's just fantastic. I've had the same people the last, 2 or 3 years come back, and They are very easy to work with. I find that the seniors not only understand, kind of what's going on anyway because they've been involved in everything for so long, but they're actually interested in the paperwork that they're even looking through and sorting for me. So for me, I do contracts and purchasing and all these things that they can kind of see the budgetary, they can see where things are going, and they can read about, how we do lock down things and how we do make sure that there's liability and that everybody's safe from this or that or what have you. And so the last one that I had, he just loved to read them all. So he actually spent, I think, more time reading than sorting them for me. But I was just so happy because he'd come in and ask questions, and I felt like he was getting two things from it. He was not only getting, yeah, I have to do it so I can get this abatement, and yeah, I have to be there because it's volunteer hours. But he also got this other part of it where he really enjoyed learning. And I couldn't have asked for a better staff for that, because those are the types of folks that are going to come back that really get invested in it. And I think if you're invested in anything, whether it be your job or a volunteer job or even school, you're going to keep doing the work whether or not you're necessarily going to get an instant payback from it.
Cool. Alright, should we go in the same order, or we want to reverse it? Which we do.
Shake it up if you want.
Maybe, Evan.
All right, Mr. Selectman Glavy.
Oh, where do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
All right. Lindsay, what's your understanding of the position that you're applying for? It's a new position here in town, as that chair mentioned. You have obviously read the job description, you've gone through the interviews to date. What's your understanding of the duties, how you would spend your day, that sort of thing?
So I think that obviously some of it's going to be a little bit vague and rough around the edges, and it's going to build in as it goes. But that being said, the finance portion or the finance director portion will obviously be sticking with Bonnie, but I will have her, which would be wonderful, to kind of bounce things off of the other duties that she may have already extricated, whether it be, just administrative, procurement support. Obviously for Keith is going to be the number one, and he's supporting you. So indirectly, I'm going to be kind of working through that section of things. There will be obviously interaction with the community. I know that, in our town, we have a lot of complaints and things that might come in. So we'll give them to the board first, and if the board doesn't want to handle them, they end up going to the assistant town manager, and we kind of negotiate, work things out. There's the CBA agreements that we're going to have to work on. I'm a trained negotiator and mediator, so getting through a CBA agreement, I always say, shouldn't be that painful. It seems like every town makes it a lot more painful than it should be. In my direction is, we need you and you need us, so it shouldn't be that painful. We kind of have the expectations going in there of what everybody wants, and if we can make it quick and easy, we're saving time, we're saving money, and everybody leaves happy and feels appreciated. So that's kind of the approach I take to it. And I've done mediation and negotiations in small claims courts. I've done it in all kinds of different atmospheres, even when I worked in Homeland Security. So, it's one of those situations where I can kind of talk to anybody and work things out. If it involves contracts, some of the contracts I know are going to go through that office, of course. And proofreading those things for Keith would be not a problem at all. I do that for the town. I actually write all the contracts for the town now. And I do all special projects for my town now, which I know special projects are involved also in this position. So things like administrative and HR, to a degree, I'm already involved in. So we've had some people that, may or may not have done some less than savory things. And so I've had to handle them or I guess handles is a bad word to use, but I've had to get discovery information together so that I can make sure that when our staff is walking in there to have a hearing for them on their, first slap on the wrist, that they are aware of all the things that they may have done and why they have done them, and they can get a clean responses to what that person feels. The answer is to those accusations, and so things can go clean and very easy. That way it doesn't seem so, I guess, aggressive, because a lot of people do go into those things very aggressively and feeling very uncomfortable. And I say, you should definitely keep everybody feeling good when you go in there, because you'll get the truth more often than not if everyone feels comfortable that, I made a mistake, and that's okay. I also handle all the credit cards and cell phones, and I'm on committees as well. So I know committees are going to be something that I'll be involved in here as well. For Lexington, I do the environmental sustainability, which is actually why I went back to Harvard, so I could get another master's in environmental and sustainability and learn a little bit more about the green communities. I know you were just granted a green community, maybe, a year or two ago? So, I've got a lot of background on that. Everything from fuel, which I was actually just talking on the phone today about fuel because I had a question about liquid propane. But, whether it be the political situations that are going on to decide whether or not the market's going to drop or go up, to understanding OPEC, to understanding the Iran deals, everything that's going on overseas and going back, I'm reading that. I'm reading case precedent. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, because not only does that affect purchasing, but it also affects the timing of the things that we're doing. So when I'm forecasting what I want to do with budgets, when someone comes into me, I can tell them sometimes, hey, you know what? I know you want to do that right now, but if you wait 3 months, you'll be better off. And if you can wait 3 months, please do it. And so that type of advice really helps people along, because they'll necessarily say, oh, I need this now, I need this now. And I'm like, well, it's the middle of the winter and that's landscaping. I know you're not going to dig through the ice. So, how far can we push this out? And, generally I'll get a better response on that. And if it's a discount because it's the end of the calendar year, I know that as well. So I do try to keep my hand on the pulse of what's going on with the different markets. And that helps not only our economic section, but it also helps our administrative, and it helps budgetary, because forecasting for all the departments is something that I'm very used to doing, and also making wish lists after that. So we'll have a forecast of, okay, we know we're going to spend this much money. We have these capital improvements that are going through. We have these other projects that are always there, on-call electrical, on-call plumbing, things that are always going through anyway. And I get the averages of those. But then we say, there might be some extra money here. So if we have a good year with snow, where can we put that money? What's our second choice? And we make a list of those things so that we can then take that money and reassign it to something that may not have been thought of, something we could do that year, but was a wish list item. And by being able to do that, it gives people hope, which is always nice. But at the same time, it also gives us a little bit of an edge on bringing down debt, and also bringing up maintenance for a lot of things, because maintenance is key to making sure the roads stay in shape, so we don't have a huge bill one year where we have to start borrowing money and pulling bonds and what have you. So those things are really important to me to kind of keep up with.
I'll wait to go around the circle again.
All right, Selectman Knox.
I'll go back to the same question that I gave the other person. It's hypothetical. You're on the job less than 2 weeks, and we find out that the town administrator has taken a leave for 6 months. He's going to work on a project that the board has allowed him to do. You're the person's in charge. You've only been here less than 2 weeks. How would you handle it as far as things happening in town hall? What would you do? And part B to that question, at the same time this is going on, and you're here less than 2 weeks, you have a department head come to you with a small personnel problem. How would you handle that personnel problem? Under all the stress that you're under, would you ask that department head to take it on themselves and come back and report to you after? Or would you work with the department head to solve that small problem?
I would absolutely help that department head. If anyone ever comes to me and they need help, and I feel as though they really need me for that specific purpose, and they're asking me for that, I'll dedicate whatever time I can to making sure that they do get some feedback from me, whatever it is that I can offer. And I'm also very honest on saying what I can give and what my timelines are for things. So if I can only give them a half an hour of airtime, but then I can say maybe write them a more comprehensive email on the back end 3 days later, I'll tell them that. And that's my way of making sure that they do feel like they're being heard, that they feel like they're still important. Even though I'm busy, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. We can't stop everything just because something has happened. We need to keep moving forward. As far as if the town manager does have to leave it and I have to step into that role, I do have a backup plan for myself, even just entering these positions. And what I think of is I have to have a backup team of people I can fall back on in case I need anything. And those are usually my references, they're my mentors, they're people that I have built a, colleague type situation with, even if I haven't worked directly with them, so that I can call on them and say, hey, I'm in a pickle, I need to know how to do this, or I need how to do this. Can you give me a crash course? Do you have the time to do that with me? And I already have 2 other town managers that have guaranteed that no matter what I do, if I'm moving up into an assistant town manager, assistant town administrator, or town administrator, town manager role, that they would absolutely answer my calls any time of the day to make sure that I can make a smooth transition into that. And that's Frank Crimmins. He's a former judge, and he is down in Avon. The other one is Marty McNamara, and he's just over in Boylston. So there's one that's, fairly close by and kind of knows the lay of the land. And there's another one that not only knows the laws, which is helpful, but on top of that is, seasoned in being a town manager as well. So they're right at my call. And my third call is to Michael Dukakis. And I've had him by my side since college. So I can call him on his cell phone in LA. I can call him on his cell phone here in Massachusetts, depending on where they're going. And he will always help me out. He'll sit down and talk to me for an hour. He'll make sure to block out that time and say, hey, these are some things that I learned in the past. This is my future. This is the mistakes I've made. And sometimes I've already heard them before because I've asked him a question that was kind of something related to it. But it's really good to have those resources at your call and being able to call someone and have them pick up, and help you out with that.
So I can just add on to that too. Internally, town hall wise, is there anything that you would do under the circumstances? He's not here and you're put in that position.
Oh, yes. I mean, right away, I'd be having a meeting. I'd be making sure that everybody kind of came together, that senior management or even superintendents if they're just below that level, and starting to figure out how are we going to break this down so everyone can get their work done, and how are we going to reroute this, because it is going to be a little different and there are going to be some changes that are going to have to be made just to accommodate for the workload. So there's going to have to be kind of a new stream of the way people are going to be inputting information and getting acceptances. There's also going to have to be a little bit more of, me giving away work that I normally would have been taking on to have people help, but try not to overload anyone either. And if I do have to bring in, someone who's part-time for an extra couple hours and give them a stipend, or bring in a temp or an intern or something to try to help one of the clerical roles so that they can move up a little bit, I think it'll be great experience for them, but at the same time, it will be good to have someone on the back end that doesn't cost as much, so we're keeping the costs down during these types of things.
You actually touched on this a little bit. Could you please explain to me what you feel are some of the pros and cons of the Baker-Polito Municipal Modernization Act?
So, the Municipal Modernization Act.
The good and the bad.
So, the bad is that it's 200 pages if you have to read it. I have read the entire thing, so I can tell you that there is a lot of, I wouldn't say anger, but frustration over some of the procurement areas, because what they did is they streamlined a lot of it, which was nice for someone who was looking from the outside in. But for our engineering team, for instance, it upped their workload, and they're the one team that really didn't need to have their work uploaded to being more difficult. And it made some little nuances to the bonding processes, so that's confusing our vendors a little bit. Adding the extra layer of combis to the system as advertising is also adding a little bit of stress. Making sure that there's a statement of work on the advertisement is upping fees when it comes to advertisements, so people are having to rebudget for those, but I did make sure to send out a memo to everybody on those ideas, just so that they knew that those things might be changing. And with town meeting coming up, they'll know to add in that extra money for those types of things. As far as retirement and finance is concerned, they also got, a good hefty change to a lot of different rules. And I would say the one that was probably struck me as the most difficult to work with is going to be the reallocation of paperwork that is tied to certain types of bonding and borrowing. So before, the way that you had to keep contracts and any type of paperwork that were tied to a capital project that had debt associated with it was the same as if it was any other project. It's for the length of the project plus the amount of years that are required for that piece of paperwork. So for me, it's 7 years generally for a contract. So I'd say, okay, this project lasted 3 years. We didn't go into litigation, so we're good. So we have to hold it for 10 years from the date of inception. And then I'd be able to label that box and put it away. Now we are going back to all of our boxes with a list of every capital project that happens to be hit by debt and saying, okay, we have to pull them all out of these boxes now. And that's not an easy thing to do on a tight schedule because we're already, as every town is, overloaded with things to do. So to have to go into our storage facility to pull out all these things and resort them and retime date them so that they now comply with these new rules is very daunting. But at the same time, I'm all about transparency. So I really do get why they want some of these things done this way. It might have been a little bit better for people to have a more comprehensive conversation about some of them before they kind of hit the deck, because a lot of them did come in at the last minute. But overall, they are working to, figure out some of the tweaks. I know they're making little bits here and there lately, and some of them have passed. So hopefully they'll refine those issues that are a little bit too hard to manage and keep them streamlined, which was their original purpose, but at the same time, still achieve what everyone else wanted as constituents of the state, which is to be able to get documents for not a lot of money if they wanted to research something. That was a big one. I mean, the cost for us to produce things sometimes is extremely expensive. I mean, if you want a 100-page document and you're paying 50 cents a page because it's being printed, and then you're also paying the time for the person to print it, and the only person there is a director of some sort, that's a lot of money to have to pay for a document that should probably just be put up online. So those types of transitions have to happen, and I think this is forcing people to do that, which is a good thing, is putting those things up online and saying, hey, this is our stuff already. We might as well just scan it and throw it up there so at least people can look at it, and we won't have to get inundated with these requests.
Okay. What would be your perspective in implementing a multifaceted vision? So we're in the process of updating our master plan. How would you handle something, the task of, here's the vision, there's multifaceted pieces of it, how would you handle something like that?
So when I was in Stoughton, we were working on multiple different types of upgrades, and they were at the level of master plan. So they were all pieces of the master plan. So there was a fire department issue where we wanted to build a second fire department on this other piece of land that we owned. And even in Lexington today, we're looking at the option of building another fire department. So that's kind of something I'm used to already seeing. Then on top of that, there's other things like roadways and upgrades and changes to rerouting things so people are walking more, and parking is, the liability of the vendor and not so much of the town. And so there's so many different layers to it that I kind of start at base when I think about it. I think to myself, okay, this is the land that we have. It's not expanding right now, it's just staying where it is. And if we don't buy anything else, let's work within the confines of that system that we have now. The next thing is where is water? Because you're going to need water if you have commercial. Do you have enough water to accommodate those things? The great thing that Littleton has is not only does it have enough water well-wise, but it does have that opportunity to share that water that's in that lake that's, I think is it on the Acton line?
They got it.
Yeah,
They got a
so.
pond, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So,
Officially.
yeah, so they have that option. So just having that option is great because it always means there's always an opportunity to expand commercially and residentially because there is a water source no matter what. That's the number one thing you have to worry about. The next thing after that, you're going into like the sewer. How are you going to get rid of waste? Can you do it? Do you need to upgrade the sewer? Because that's very expensive. And if you're going to upgrade the sewer, at what rate are you going to upgrade it? Are you going to upgrade it for today or are you going to upgrade it for 20 years from now with that forecasting out? My thing is you should always upgrade ahead of time because if the big dig taught us anything, it would teach us that we need to look at least 40 years ahead of time. Then after I look at that ground level, I just keep moving up. And that's kind of going from the bottom up. It literally is the bottom up. The next thing you're going to be looking at is roadways. Can you accommodate the master plan with the roadways that you have? Do you need to add public transit? Do you need to add more streets? What's your choice? Which one do you want to go with? Because they're very different directions. Right now, being a green community, one would think most likely you'd want to go with something that was a little bit more green, which would be more of the public transportation end, getting busing. Lexington, we just did another bus bid, so I know how tedious that can be, especially if you have a large senior community, finding the right buses for them to get on and off of, and also the fact that those are very expensive for maybe not enough payoff. So you're going to want to do a cost benefit analysis as soon as you think about that bid right there. So public transportation is always an immediate, like, are we going to make any money from this? Is it going to be a wash or are we going to completely lose and is that worth it? So after I would go through those types of transportation issues, I'd then be going to electrical, lighting, gas, any sort of power elements after that, making sure that those are all adequate for a build out over the next 20, 40 years. And since a town like Littleton is lucky enough to have already had a master plan done not so long ago, I believe it was 2014, the last one was done. It gives us that opportunity to build on that master plan rather than start from scratch. And what that does is, one, it keeps costs down because you don't need to restart the plan. You just need to make edits to the plan that's already there, and it will automatically reduce the cost of things. Because there are some things that you're going to stand by that are already there that are okay. And there's going to be things that you're going to want to negotiate, and then there's going to be things that you're going to say, take this off, and you've gone in a totally different direction now. And then there's also going to be things you'll want to add because you're going to get funding or grants for them. So those are things you want to look forward to in the future. There are things that 5, 10, 20 years out that are going to have a grant coming along or already have a grant ready for them. And if you don't get that, do you go one way or the other way? So building in the option for that to be there or not be there is also really important because you want, obviously, the town to have everything it possibly can. So you want to build in for the option for all of that to be there. But if it doesn't, it's okay because we have Plan B as the other option to stick in that spot, and not have to pay the amount of money or be able to still upgrade whatever that item is or that building is, but just not at the same rate that you would have if you got the MSBA money or if you'd gotten that grant.
Okay. I have a couple more before it gets pulled out. So, how do you cope with stress, the stress of the demanding duties and responsibilities of this, of this position? How do you deal with your stress?
Well, having 3 kids, I deal with stress every day. So it's really kind of an array of things, I guess. I am athletic, so I'll do yoga, I'll practice mindfulness and things like that that are kind of more on the, what I call the hippie spectrum of my life. And then there's things that are more, obvious, which is, okay, what do I need to do and prioritize? Helping prioritize and make my day a little bit more organized will help me move through the day and feel like, okay, this has been accomplished. I have enough time to do everything, and I can move forward tomorrow feeling like I've gotten what I need to get done, and everything else has to be moved over. And if it isn't getting done, why is it not getting done? And make that note to myself at the end of the day. What happened and why can't this get done? So I'm always carrying around my book, making sure that I write in all the notes as to what I'm prioritizing first, second, and follow up. And then on the other side, I write vicious notes to myself as to why I didn't accomplish something and what was in my way, what were my blockers, and how am I going to figure those out for the next day. And when I come back the next day, I figure those out before I start to redo my list for the day, because I want to make sure that I build those new options in. Either I have to research something, I need to go and find something, I need to go talk to somebody, I need to, have a meeting about something so I can get a lot of different ideas. Whatever it is, I want to make sure I can build that into my schedule.
Great. One more, and then I'll be done. What drew you to working in town administration? Why do you like dealing with the town administration aspect?
When I was in 8th grade, I said to my mother that I wanted to do a job that I could never hurt anybody, but I would always be able to help. And she told me that was impossible. And I said, well, I'm going to try to get as close to it as possible. So I thought, well, if I'm a lawyer, I can help people no matter what, but, unfortunately there's, criminals, and maybe I'll try to just do clemency law, and I kind of try to figure out all these ways that I could do that in some sort of way, shape, or form. And then when I was in college, I realized that a lot of things that were politically focused were also lobbyist driven. So I kind of weighed back and forth on, well, what are they lobbying for? Who are they lobbying? What does all this mean? And when it came down to the very grassroots of it, it came down to what communities really want and need, and what people are telling other people of power so that they can get what they need to continue in a happy and healthy existence. And at the very base of that is municipal government. That's who they're going to talk to first. That's the first person they're going to complain to. They're going to call you up because they didn't pick up the trash that day. They're going to call you up because, the farmer moved in next door and his pigs stink and, he's not draining his water right. They're going to call you because somebody built a house and it's way too close to their land. And, all these things are their day-to-day life, and those irritants are going to be what makes them stressed or happy. And you want a happy community, but you also want to do it in a healthy way that helps everybody, not just that one complaint, but all complaints. And when you hear one, you know that there's probably another 20 behind it, if not more. So for me, I thought, that's such a great place to be, is to be able to directly help someone on a regular basis. And in a small town, which is my ideal workspace, especially a historic one, there are a lot of very dedicated people, and thus they're very verbal. So it's nice to be able to have someone who says, I absolutely hate this. And I'm okay if they don't agree with whatever I think, because what I think doesn't matter. It's their house. It's their land. It's their property. And whatever they want to get, done and have achieved, as long as it's, legal, obviously, and it's a good fit for the town, and we can do it with the funds provided, we should definitely look into it. And I think just the idea of looking into something for somebody takes so much weight off their shoulders right away. They say, at least somebody's doing something for me. Someone's really trying to make this community great and wonderful and what I've always wanted, and that's why I live here. And people are very proud of where they come from. I know that most people on this board, if they haven't lived here forever, they've lived here for quite a long time. And that speaks exactly to what my dream was for all those years, which is to go somewhere where you can really help. And you have all given back, obviously, and you're helping directly. And that's the same dream that I share, is to be able to help directly and find a place that I can be proud that I put something into.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Vice Chair.
Guess I'm the outlier when it comes to growing up here, and but we chose here, so this is wouldn't call any other place home at this point. All right, so first question I have for you is a two-part question, and I would start out by saying, do you believe in the saying, "It's okay to fail; it's a great opportunity to learn"?
Yes.
Okay. If yes, please tell us about a time when you failed professionally and what you learned from it.
Well, I think everybody's probably failed more than they're willing to admit. And we did have this question in Keith's interview as well. And, what I said was, I've had problems where I may think that I'm doing something in the correct manner, but it doesn't go across the board. So the way that you approach one thing may not always work for everybody. And I was approaching a new way of handling input into my office because there had been a longstanding problem in the town that when they were dealing with things that were purchasing related or contract related, they kind of wanted to not have to deal with it because it's a bureaucratic nightmare. So when they would come to my office, they would just say, I have a bid to put out, or I have a contract I need to work on, here, take this. And they would walk away. Or they would just send it to me in an email and just try to not ever talk to me again and just say, you can get that right? And just, So I would say, you know what? After I'm done looking at it, come sit with me for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, depending on what their project was. And sometimes it was as little as 5 minutes if it was something very simple. And I'd say, I just want to go over it with you when we're done so that way we can talk about it. It releases the fear involved in all of it. And it also gives them that chance to ask me questions that they normally wouldn't ask because they're too afraid of walking into that department and not knowing the information, but at the same time, wanting to get something done and not wanting to sound, like they don't understand it. So I started doing that, and that worked out really well. And I started doing trainings. I said, anybody who ever wants to come in for an hour. We'll sit down. I'll go through any of your questions with you. I'll give you all the handouts I can to, like, cheat sheets to help you through all these things, through all your projects, through all your forecasting and budgetary needs, and see what I can do to try to help you help me. So that way everything goes seamlessly. And it was working wonderfully. And then one day I got an email, and it was very much, you need to give this to me, you need to write it up, and you need to send it back to me. And I said, okay, great. Well, after I'm done writing it, come see me for 15 minutes. And they said no. And so I kind of was like, well, you really need to come up here because it's really important. And I hadn't met with this person before. So I pushed a little bit further, and finally she called my boss and said, I am not meeting with her. I have this, and this to do, and I need this back tomorrow because it was this rush that I inherited from somebody else, and the Board of Selectmen need it, and this person needs it. And so not knowing all those things because she wasn't verbalizing them to me, and I was just trying to stick with my path, we had a definite communication. It was like a smash. It wasn't even a nice, clean, understanding. It was a total crash into each other. So what we learned from that was, okay, maybe I should ask some more questions and really dig in if somebody does reject it the first time and say, hey, is there a reason why? And that actually led me to learn a whole nother set of information, which is when there's something wrong with anybody, whether they're my staff, whether they're my colleagues, whether they're just somebody that I'm, working with on a project, I've learned that probably 99% of problems have absolutely nothing to do with work or the people in that room. They're usually something that have to do with at home, their families, their mother, someone's sick, they're stressed out, money's tight, something else is going on. And to be able to have an honest talk with your staff is a great opportunity to say, how can I help you do your job better? And that's what that taught me. It gave me not only the perspective of not everybody's the same and, you need to ask more questions, but you need to ask more questions all the time. There should always be that humanity to it because you don't know what people are going through and not everyone's willing to tell you. So it does help you with the issue of obviously what you have to do at the time, but also on personnel issues. It does tell you that there's more going on, and learning more about your staff is never a bad thing because you can always find out why they need that Friday night off, for the next 3 weeks. And why does it seem weird? Oh, they just want long weekends. That's not the reason why. There's always something else going on. So it's kind of a good note to have.
You kind of teed up my next question. And I'm going to pull this one into the mix because I didn't ask Anthony this question, but you kind of laid it out there for me. So you're talking about dealing with different people. And across different people, there's different personalities. First of all, have you taken any of the assessments, MBTI, DISC, or any of those assessments? Do you have any training in those?
Oh, I don't know what they.
Okay, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator or the DISC analysis, no assessments?
Oh, you know what,
personality
we've had to
indicators.
do like some of those in, we had a training person that came in for, management, and they gave us some of those, but I don't.
Okay,
I
not a
don't
problem.
remember
So,
what the names were, yeah.
but you do realize that there are different types of personalities, and those assessments analyze individuals, and they kind of put people in buckets.
Oh, yeah.
And they can work very well, but they can also create silos. But, so my question is more to find out from you, when you learn that people handle things differently, and they have different personalities, and you have to deal with people different ways, how do you, I mean, obviously you just mentioned that you learned from a failure of putting everybody in the same bucket, and everybody has to kind of follow down the same path because it fits what you wanted. But, I guess I'm gonna try to pinpoint this. If you're working with challenging people, how would you self-evaluate to determine, this is kind of my personality, and I need to identify what kind of personality this person has? How would you kind of go through that process when you're working with challenging people within your current role, or if you were here in town hall?
So I always say I'm like brutally honest with myself and with my family about things. And we have this very big rule of being open and talking about everything, even my older stepdaughters and my husband and my parents. We have just this very open information. And it was because of some things that had happened in our life that were challenging. And if we weren't completely honest about what was going on, it was very hard for the kids to kind of get through what was going on. And that has been a part of really amping up my ability to recognize different personalities and even just the mannerisms of people changing. But even before that, I've had a very, I guess, diverse life. So my mom is Irish and Mexican, and my dad is white Native American. And so because there's all these different cross cultures going on, there's all kinds of different customs going on, and people act really strange in different customs. So, kind of melding that all together is a really interesting situation. Like my grandmother ran away with my grandfather when she was 17 to go get married because he was Mexican and she was Irish, and that was absolutely not okay in, 1930 or whatever. So, one person would have said, oh, it was probably because, she was young and she was going to get herself in trouble, but it wasn't. It was just because of a cultural thing. So I've learned throughout my whole childhood that there's cultural issues that are going on all the time. And then to layer on top of that, there's always personality issues that go with that. So your culture is also going to define your personality, and then your education, your upbringing, whether you grew up rich, poor, or indifferent, whether you are now considered into some sort of box that you feel like you've been boxed into, the silos that you were talking about. When people feel like they're siloed into a certain area, they do feel like they've already been signed, sealed, delivered. This is the package they're in, and they're never going to get out of that, and there's no way to move beyond it. For me, I've learned from having such a great diverse background that you can really do anything you want, but you have to do it in a very respectful way, and you have to understand that not everyone's going to want to do anything that you want to do, whether it be wear the same clothes, they're not going to like your hair, they're not going to like your skin, they're not going to like your eye color, they're not going to like the way you walk or talk or anything, So, understanding that that's okay. People don't have to like everything about you, and you don't have to like everything about anybody else, but you do have to be kind, and you do have to be civil, and you do have to be able to work with everybody. When I was in college, we did Model UN and Model Arab League, and Model Arab League always cracked me up because when we'd have the high school kids come and they dress in, garb, and they try to pretend that they were Syria for the day, and you would laugh because it's such a cliche to think, that a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid can think like a Syrian national. But they do their homework and they really do try. And, now with everything going on in the world is not only globalized, which right there you have to always constantly work with all different types of people. But on top of that, every day, I mean, even now, just the news feeds you're getting is about every culture, every religion, everything. If you can't have sympathy and understanding for that, and you won't teach yourself, you're going to end up feeling ignorant when you're not necessarily an ignorant person. And it's going to make it very difficult for you to move through life in a globalized society. So there's so many things that go with being understanding and sympathetic and kind and compassionate that people don't really talk about in the business world. I guess it's kind of a little too mushy-gushy for them, but for me, I'm really in tune with that because there is so much that goes with it.
Okay. All right, those are kind of deep questions. The next one I have is relative to you and your career path. So where do you feel this job fits into your career goals as far as 3-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan? So you mentioned that you love the community and already started looking at real estate and surrounding communities and that kind of thing. So for me, at least, that sounds like were you to get the position that you would be looking to, put down some roots and see where things went. But just kind of like to find out from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my dream has always been to be able to settle into a community that I absolutely love and be able to stay there. Lexington was a great opportunity for me to first settle myself into a community that I felt comfortable in, but I kind of ran into a roadblock because there's only 2 positions above me. So settling into the community would also mean having to take the jump into those positions. Both people are retiring either now or within a couple years. So my choices were, do I stick around and wait for the one that's in a couple years, or do I go for the one that's coming now? And if I do I stay here? Can I afford to stay here? What am I going to do with myself? So I did put my hat in the ring for the assistant town manager of Lexington, and my town manager and my assistant town manager were very happy with everything that I said and me going through the panels, and I was in the top 4, and that was, a nod to me. They still haven't announced the top 1, but I know I'm not it because I've already had that conversation with them because I did tell them that I was going to be a finalist in Littleton, and they kind of said to me, what do you think you want to do? And I said, well, I really feel like I need to learn more. And I can learn a lot from Carl, who's our town manager. He's fantastic. But I also know that the timeline for Carl to be there is pretty short. And then I know Linda's leaving, but Bonnie's staying. And
Yes, she is.
That's what this is all about.
And I also know that Keith and I have a lot in common as far as our background and our history through everything from MAPC to also going to Harvard. So learning from him, I think that we'll have a very similar learning curve, and that will be very helpful for me to speed it along. And I know that everybody on this group is also, has innumerable amounts of different types of experience. So unfortunately, I have LinkedIn and searched you guys all, so you'll see my name.
That was you?
Yeah, that was me. A little stalking there, but not like in a bad way. And especially Melissa, I mean, you're, around the same situation I am, and I think it's so great to be able to emulate what you're doing, which is really putting your heart and soul into your own town while you're also working a full career as well. So it's very daunting, I'm sure. But loving your community, and just putting what you can into it, that's what I'm on the same page. It's exactly what I want to do. So for me, this is a more natural next step than the one I would have had had I gone any further in Lexington. So again, it's a little Lexington, but it's a little bit more me. So it kind of worked out. The stars aligned there a little bit. So I was pretty happy with it.
So you kind of answered one of the other questions I had, which was, why you're looking to move from Lexington. So I think you pretty much laid into that with the last question. I'm going to open up to my colleagues, and then I do have, if we have time, I do have a couple others that I'd touch on.
Yeah, and two related questions, and one of them is directly along the lines of what you were just saying in terms of your present experience in Lexington. I had just, in looking at your job description in Lexington, thought that it was actually, by appearances, not too different or kind of similar to the position we're posting, so it looks almost like a lateral move. We don't have a town manager system, we have a town administrative system. The duties that you're doing in terms of procurement and, collective bargaining, implementation, that sort of thing, HR, are similar to the prospective job that we're hiring for here, so I don't know whether you've thought that through, whether it's just a change of scenery will give you new things to learn, or whether you've thought that through, that this is essentially, or in some respects anyways, a pretty similar job to what you're doing now.
I think you're giving me a lot of credit, which is nice. But I think that there are a lot of things here that I'm going to be learning and expanding on, because right now, a lot of the work that I do, I'm doing with Linda. So I am kind of pigeonholed in the idea that I'm doing some of the work, but I'm not doing all of the work. And because of that, being able to do all of the work, for all intents and purposes, is going to be a jump in what I'm going to have to learn, but at the same time, that's exactly what I'm looking to do, which is expand on that knowledge. And then once I expand on that knowledge, I want to be able to kind of keep it consistent and be able to add to the town with all of that knowledge that I'm bringing in and what I'm learning at the same time, so that eventually, in 10 years or more, I'd be able to, be something of real value, the way Keith is of real value at this level. I want to be as much of a value as that could be. And I think this will bring me to that place.
Okay. And one last question from me, from your resume. It looks like that June of 2008, National Conflict Resolution Center, is that the Homeland Security position?
No, the National Conflict Resolution Center is a negotiating firm.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, you had mentioned the federal government.
Yeah, I
That's
worked.
not on here?
It's not, it doesn't fit on there. I did it right after college. Homeland Security had just been created when I was in college, at the end of college. And so when I got out, I actually had the intent of joining the FBI, but Homeland Security opened up, and I knew someone who was working there and doing HR. So I sent in my resume, and I started working for them as a first responder and a negotiator. Then I left and I went to a law firm to work for a little while to get some jargon down, because I was heading to law school. So after law school and graduate school, I came back home to Massachusetts, and a year later I dragged my husband out of California and made him come with me. And, I started my career over here, but I stayed with Homeland Security at MAPC as a coordinator, and then I started building out budgets and procurement and working that way, and that's kind of where I got the decision of what exactly I wanted to do. And I think that's kind of the place that it happens, is right after you're out of graduate school, you start to see all the different options you have and which ones you're going to pick from. And I didn't take it lightly what I was doing. I sat down with, I remember my town accountant, with the accounting staff at my firm. I sat down with a lot of people and said, what direction do you think I'm most useful in, and which one do you think I'll actually be happy in? Because those may be two different answers. And we actually all decided that, this was the path that I was going to take, and I was really happy with that. And then I just, forded the river, I guess is the best way to put it.
So, but from 2008, when you were at the National Conflict Resolution, that was in California, moved east, but from then to 2012 was MAPC, Department of Revenue, UMass Boston, and Town of Stoughton. Were those all movements up the ladder? Because that's
I
like
know,
five
it seems a little
positions
strange,
in
and I'll
5 years
explain.
or 4 years.
Yeah, so MAPC, I was working there for about a year and a half. And then I went to DOR because they were giving me a kind of a bump up. So MAPC is a quasi-state agency. So going to a full state agency would have been the next natural step. So when I got the job at DOR, it was kind of a little bit more centralized of the budgeting and the purchasing in one place. And I was there for 6 months, and then the mass layoffs happened. So I left in month 7, to a very shock because I found out the day that I was leaving that day. So it was kind of a little hard because I was supposed to go on vacation that weekend. So I remember not being super happy about that. But when I went to the unemployment office, I was there with a million other people because everyone else was being laid off from the state. And I sat down and talked to the agent there and I said, what am I gonna do? Like, I've never been unemployed. I don't even know like how to like fill out these forms or what I'm doing. And he said, well, if you get a job, you can just go and do that rather than collect unemployment. And I thought, I'm not the type of person that really wants to collect if I don't have to. And I know I'm smart enough that I could get something in between. So I got a contracting job at UMass and I just did contracts and grant work while I was waiting and interviewing for other things. And they actually were willing to offer me a job there too, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I still continued to work there, and then I became the CPO of Stoughton. So it was kind of a nice transition. I did get very lucky on that, and I felt like I, saved the state a little bit of money by doing that. And unfortunately, I had to move to East Boston to pull it off. So it was a little bit of give and take there, but you have to learn that.
Okay, great.
Not that that's a great commute.
Did you round 2 questions?
I'm good.
You good?
I just have one to ask before, too. In a town like Littleton, we have elected boards, we have appointed boards, and to get to a common goal of something that's happened in town, sometimes you might have personalities get involved in certain boards that are blocking something. And in your position, it would probably be your goal to go out there and try to answer those questions. How would you handle 2 boards that are at odds with each other to get to this common goal?
Well, my training in mediation negotiations would come in very good handy there because I did do a lot of small claims court work, and that is the epitome of 2 people absolutely hating each other and going to court over something very simplistic. They're usually going to court over $50, something really silly, a parking spot sometimes, but they are very determined that they are correct and the other person is absolutely wrong. And the great approach to that is simply to find out where the common ground is first. Because you always want to talk about the good stuff first. Find out what exactly they both really love about what's happening, what this, project is that's going on. And once you find out what those things are, you can build off of those and branch off of those to try to find some ways, issue by issue to start to bond it back together. And it sounds bad to kind of implode something or blow it up before you put it back together, but it is one of those things where you kind of have to knock down the whole thing and then piece it together issue by issue. It takes a little bit more time, but if you think about it in the long run, it's extremely efficient because you're not sitting down 50 different times to have the same argument over and over again. You're saying, okay, we're at an impasse, that's okay. It's going to happen no matter what. But let's try to find out what we do agree upon and let's see what we can build out of that. And if it's only building halfway there, okay, then we'll meet again and we'll do it again to, figure out the end game. But just to get things started, everyone generally wants the same thing, which is they want what's best for the town. They just may have a different way of thinking that they're going to go about doing that. And that's okay. But you want to get everybody's input and just really just break it down to the simplistics of it and then build it back up to be something that everyone will go, hey, actually, I didn't think about that. That sounds really great. Because they may not know the reasoning that somebody else has for something, and then they may agree with it. So it's nice to kind of, again, break it down and build it back up.
Thank you.
Still, is that something?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Good?
No, I'm good. I equitable.
Yep.
Same number of questions for each candidate.
Is there anything you want to ask us or anything else you'd like to share?
I mean, I think it comes across that, I think Keith got it too much, that I'm super passionate about what I do. I really love my career, and I really love this community. And again, I would not be applying here if I did not absolutely love the community, and I wouldn't have obviously gone to the point where I'm like looking at houses and finding out the different like lay of the land. I actually used to buy my turkeys down the street from here
cool.
at one of the local farms, because we lived in Pepperell for a short period of time while we were saving money to buy a home when we first got married. So I bought my turkey there for years, and I never knew that I was driving through this tiny little corner of Littleton on my way to work in Lexington. So it's kind of a cool thing. And Carl, my boss, he told me that he lived here too, and he told me a bunch of great things about it as well. And I think I'm one of probably the very few people that said, you can call Carl, my town manager, and my assistant town manager, and you can call all my bosses, because they're all super supportive, and they know that this is a good thing for me, and that it's a good fit, and that I also really love it. And I don't think I could ever say that in a job before. Oh yeah, go ahead, call my boss. It doesn't really happen usually, but they're rooting for me, and I'm rooting for me, and I think that it's a great town, and I hope that everyone here is also rooting for me, because I would just absolutely love being able to work here.
Thank you, appreciate your passion. Thank you. All right, if nothing else, I think we're good here. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Lindsay. Yeah, so much. Thanks for coming back.
Motion adjourned, we're gonna do it through this.
Oh, yeah, good question. No, we don't adjourn.
No, we're not gonna adjourn now, or
Could she be here?
You can discuss. Yeah.
leave it open?
We'll say goodbye and.
Yes, that'd be more.
Want to take a quick recess, or?
Thanks so much, Lindsay. Yeah, nice to see you again.
Watch out for the wires. It's kind
Thank you.
of a death trap down there. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet
Thank
you.
you. It's nice to meet you. Thank you so much. Good to see you again. Thank you.
I'm leaving.
Pass them to-
Us old guys, you know.
It's so great to actually meet you.
Okay, so.
We're still on, that's good.
Yeah, we're still on. We're just waiting for the
Mr.
fifth
Knox.
member.
Because we are making a motion, right? Are we doing
We're
it?
discussing.
Appointment tonight.
Anna, we don't have
To
to.
discuss what you want to do.
Gotcha. Wow, we're.
I hadn't asked it before.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm just not sure.
No,
Yeah, that was just, that's what I saw. Right?
yep, agreed. Caught up with my own notes. Trying to read them. Which is why I typed my questions. Because I would have been, as it was, I was stumbling over something.
You mean that 16 in bold? Yeah, me too.
No cheat is needed.
Oh, yeah, well, they still were needed.
Jimmy's got 8 pages. One question, but it's 8 pages. It's got a 96 font.
All right.
Well,
So,
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'll jump right in.
great.
All right. Imagine you want to jump in right away.
Yeah, well, let's start this thing. I thought, first I want to thank Keith and the entire interview process. I thought you brought 2 candidates before us that absolutely qualified. In looking at resumes, it's very difficult to get a feel for the individual. So going through tonight, I think, was very helpful to me. I liked both candidates. I thought that Lindsay is a very high-energy, caring individual, and not to say that Anthony isn't, but I felt that Anthony was a more sustainable and a little bit calmer and more even as far as in answering questions. And one that came to mind, not only mine, but it was Joe's when Joe asked the question in regards to Keith leaving. I thought Anthony's response of, I want to talk to my department heads, straight up. Let's see what's going on in town, make sure that I'm connected to town hall. And I think Joe had to kind of prompt Lindsay into the answer. That was that was very loud and clear to me that, as far as a fit, as far as a team, process, I thought, I gave that to Anthony. As far as my answers, she was very, I thought, I asked about the Modernization Act. Lindsay obviously was very queued up on it. She told us she read all 200 pages, more than I read, I must admit. So she's a very analytical, schooled individual. That's what I find with her. Anthony they had both the focus on the whole records request in that new law, kind of mixed into their answers, which I found interesting. I thought that, again, Anthony just had a more calm demeanor to the answer. And as far as my other questions, I thought that the piece about stress, you always think about stress, and we all live in a stressful environment. We all live our day-to-day stresses, and, how to deal with that. I think that both of them gave great answers. But again, I just got that feeling of more a calm and a more decisive answers through Anthony. So personally, I think either one is good. We've gone through this before in our appointments. But I would recommend Anthony.
Very good. Who wants to go next?
I'll jump in. I'm kind of right in the same path with Jim. One of the things that I have to say about Lindsay is she's a student of the game. She's very much by the book. She literally buys the book and reads it. She's very textbook, whereas on Anthony's side, he seemed more real life, more practical, if you will. One of the things that, putting those two elements next to each other, where Anthony's kind of lived it and created, I use the word created on purpose because he used it, some different positions, and this is creating a role or a position, and I kind of like him having that experience from scratch kind of thing. Whereas I think I don't want to call it naivete because she's really a very bright woman. But some of the answers, like you mentioned, the master plan, Jim, I think you did, didn't you? Mm-hmm. But he was speaking relative to the master plan process that we're going through right now, whereas Lindsay was referring to a previous master plan, where she did a bunch of research. It was kind of almost like a little tripping point for me. It kind of threw a flag up for me. But I think they both bring a lot of great attributes, great skills, and to Jim's point, I think they both are highly qualified. But the creation of new positions for Anthony, the experience, I guess, the fact that he's gone through, that they've both kind of done some other things, but most recently gone back to school and gotten his master's at Suffolk after going through the certificate program, is, to me, a commitment. I like this answer relative to his goals. If 5 years down the road, if something comes up and it's a better opportunity for me, I would hope that there'd be communication with us and that wouldn't be a surprise to us. But I would say that my front runner right now, unless you guys can convince me otherwise, would be Anthony.
May I jump in again, Madam Chair? One thing that did definitely come out from both candidates, and I think the purpose of this whole process has been the whole procurement piece and HR piece, get it out of the budget piece of the town administration. So I thought that in comparing the two, listening to the two about their procurement processes and the way they handle the people that report to them and the way they handled the procurement process in regards to what do you need, let's work together, let's make it together, let's get what you need type of attitude. I felt that Anthony was more open to the needs of the individuals, in his case, it's just police and fire, public safety, in that Lindsay was not as open. I didn't feel that way in some of her responses anyway, so I just wanted to bring that up, because procurement's gonna be a big piece of this. And we want to make sure the town gets what it wants, so, sorry.
Anybody want to go next?
Well, I'll go next. I guess I kind of arrive at the same place by similar rationales as both Jim and Chuck. If there were a big discrepancy in qualification, I'd be focused on that. I don't think there is. I think they both arrived tonight fully qualified education professionally to handle it. And so what I'm very mindful is I think a lot of our successes here in town derive from a great working relationship amongst the folks that, work in the town departments, and the fit is as important as anything. And I think that Anthony, both in his presentation here tonight and what his career path shows, is a stability, and also, I think Chuck keyed on something very important, the fact that he has twice created, this has been the third time in a row that he's created the position that he's coming into, and that there's something comforting in that to me. Another point that you had cited, Chuck, the master plan reference. In the case of Lindsay, she was certainly did her homework, but she didn't get it right.
Right.
So, and but she was very sure of herself, and it's like kind of a wince moment. It's like, slow down, hit the brakes, wait and come and learn, before you start reaching conclusions. And I don't want to read too much of it, but that's kind of the nature of interviews, so.
And when you have people that are pretty close, there's little factors that.
Don't assume that, the five folks here aren't gonna know just a little bit more on the subject than you do, and that, you don't know all the nuances, so whatever. That part of it, and, I think also it's hard not to take note of, the situation in Lexington. Had that worked out for her, she wouldn't be here, and, and I wonder whether, because it didn't work out for her, that's, maybe why, and not for any bad reasons, but just, time to look around type thing. And that doesn't leave me with the warmest feeling that, if we were to offer and hire for the position, that should be here for as long as, it's pure speculation on my part, but it's informed by both of their career tracks. I think I'm personally looking for somebody who can slide in and will be there for a while. If the right opportunity comes up, God bless you, move on. Anybody who's an assistant wants to be the full thing, I assume. It's most people anyway, so that likelihood's gonna come up with anybody, but I feel much more of a comfort level as we.
Except Bonnie.
Right. Frankly, I
Is
wish,
that what you are, the full thing?
I wish Clancy had applied for this
The real
thing
thing.
down at all. We had two good candidates, we had a third one in the room here who could have walked right in, but anyway, I think I can see success as a much more of a likelihood in both fitting in and getting the job done right and sticking around with Anthony than with Lindsay.
Mr. Knox.
Going by what has already been said, I'm favoring what you said. You've covered some of the things that I had in mind too. I think when you do an interview too, that you see personalities come out, and you try to, at least in my mind, I try to find the personality that fits into what we're doing here. And I think that's where Anthony comes in. And going back to the question I asked on purpose when you wrote to see Gore, his first answer was internal. It was what he was gonna do, how he would handle it right here, whereas Lindsay went out and said, well, I know this person, that person, that person, that person. So that showed me something there. And then the other thing Lindsay said is that her goals since she was 8 years old, whatever it was to be in this type of town government. But as you see in her resume and before her resume, she's jumping from one thing to another thing to another thing. And now she's finally here. I like the demeanor that Anthony brought and the amount of time he spent to answer questions. And I think he stayed on the questions without giving a lot of other background that probably didn't even relate to the question. So I felt a lot more comfortable. Once again, you're reading into personalities, but I'm a lot more comfortable, and they're both qualified, and I think the committee did a phenomenal job in bringing these two candidates before us. But my feeling right now would be to go with Anthony.
If I can just piggyback on Joe talking about the personalities, one of the reasons I switched up my question and asked the personality question was just down that same road. You know, it's doing the same thing, trying to put myself in, okay, so if I was dealing with Lindsay on a procurement issue, or you know, if we had to deal with her, I felt more, just personally for me, to deal with Anthony, I think that I would be better able to, I'd work through whatever's in front of me, but I personally would be able to, I think.
To jump on that too, I have a feeling too that she is so strong in her personality, in a lot of cases, it's going to be my way. And
Well, she mentioned that as her failure in the question that I asked. That was her failure, that she kind of set the process in place and said, you need to come up here and see me 15 minutes, and she didn't waver on it. So I respect her for coming up and, you know, and opening up about that. But to your point about the personality, she kind of showed some of her cards there. And, you know, we needed to fall into the full things way of.
The whole thing.
No, I think we're kind of all going down the same path, but different things that kind of stood out to each of us.
we haven't heard from my chair though.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I,
I'm gonna keep talking because she just jumped in and started asking questions. I'll yield the floor.
I can't disagree with anything you guys are saying. We're really lucky to have to make such a decision when we've got two really highly qualified candidates that were great, and they both knew a lot about Littleton. I was impressed by that. They did some homework on that respect, although maybe didn't always get it right. You're absolutely right, but they did their homework, and I think that's important, that they are not just seeing this as a job, but that they are passionate about our town and realize that to us, that's exactly what's important to us. It's not just a task that needs to get done. It is something that we love. And so, again, excellent candidates. You know, you guys mentioned that same question, and it struck me as well, and it was the one which was an interesting question about Keith, if he goes to go hang out with his his buddy, you know.
Homie.
Yeah, and the other thing, it was totally external, but she also, when you even led her to internal, the board was never mentioned. It was never mentioned. I would come to you guys and ask what you wanted, and I thought, oof, that's a big miss for me. I really liked her, and I really liked Anthony, but that was a red flag. Like, you know, we should definitely be in your top 3 areas, I think, to check with in that situation.
Probably top one,
Yeah,
actually, now that I think of it.
yeah, so that one was, oh, yeah, and we're always here to help with that sort of thing, so it was a little bit of a,
I've stopped taking his calls because he
You're not too cocky, this is
Red Link, so.
and the other thing you guys picked up on as well is a bit of stability, and if I'm not selfish, I don't know what the right word is, but I've been with my company for 15 years. I'm really, really loyal, and I know, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, having several year jobs. It's just, I see that and I go, okay, I can identify with that. I can identify with wanting to get the job done, see it to the bitter end, and you're there with the ship until the ship is no more, sort of a thing. So I identified with that a lot. I felt like, you know, we'd get more of a stable and potentially longevity out of him. And I think the learning curve will be quicker with him as well. I think he could slide kind of in and pick up and start running a little faster. And that's what we really need, because back to the point of this all is to make sure we got our key resources focused on what they really need to focus on. And we need someone to start picking up stuff and running like immediately, so. Yeah, she's already ready. So you're gonna pick, you know, I did notice that there is a requirement that you can lift 40 pounds in here. I was like, what are you guys lifting is it?
We didn't ask the question of her that we asked of him relative to start date.
Oh, yeah.
And just, I mean, she also put in for the position of West Boylston last year. She was a finalist in that position for the TA, I think, full TA, right?
Yes.
She's gonna make it. She's just
Yeah,
gonna.
she's done some interviewing.
Yeah. So,
And Clancy even got.
it takes 2 to stock.
You even got a compliment tonight from the board.
Thank you, Paul.
Wow, I made it. Make sure it's in the minutes.
Well, in terms of what Clancy's been working on, if we get the next Green Communities grant for $250,000, it'll be because of all the work that Clancy has been doing on that.
Can we cut a piece of that out to him?
Excellent.
All back to the
Just so
town.
you know. Just so you know.
Very good.
Hey, what's up with you working full-time and dedicating yourself to this position, but what
You
are we,
know,
what are we?
I didn't want to say it, you just put your foot in your mouth.
Ouch!
So
That hurt me!
I looked at you guys and you just didn't quite pass muster.
Yeah.
all I could think is, she kind of assumed I had
I
children.
just wanted to mention too that I couldn't agree more that you had two very well-qualified candidates here. And the one thing that I want to make sure that you know is that the department head team, in bringing forward those two names and not others, these were the two people that they thought they could learn the most from, the highest energy, and that they would be able to get the most out of.
Oh, good.
And that, because that was key, that there were other candidates that we looked at who, while they could have filled the job, that they weren't ones that the department heads were necessarily going to gravitate to. And with respect to Anthony's background in public safety, when I was talking with Bonnie earlier, when we look at who are the highest maintenance users of Bonnie's time now, and might we actually be able to get them to wean themselves from going to see Bonnie and seeing the ATA, that's a higher, I think it's going to be, I think that fit for Anthony dealing with public safety is one way to assure that we actually see Bonnie's time being removed from just those non-finance areas and into, and to have the people go to see the new ATA.
So if he does come on, well, we just need to make sure we give him, to deal with his stress, a key card to get into the workout room at the police and fire
Yeah.
stations. He can build the relationship, and we can start that weaning process.
Or the kickboxing up at the point, so.
Yeah. Okay, well, it sounds like we're
Don't the seniors
all-
do Tai Chi
Consensus?
too?
Yeah. Should we get this done or what?
Yep.
Can you see it? Is it the right font? or-
Go for it, buddy. Go for it.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Town Code, Chapter 3, Section 3, to approve the appointment by the Town Administrator of Anthony M. Ansaldi Jr. to the full-time Grade 13 salaried position of Assistant Town Administrator.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do I have another motion?
Make a motion, second?
So moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, you two are
Thank
still.
you very much.
We can throw this out. Just wanted to schedule on maybe before we do the sewer thing,
Sewer
there,
thing.
a pre-meeting so that.
Sure.
Probably
Yeah,
you
be
have the
glad to do
toughest
that.
schedule, what works, and
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Chris, and
Okay, yeah, we'll be glad to work on
and
that.
Zimmerman, unless he's involved in one of the applicants, and Megan.
Literally this meeting, all right?
We'll set up the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks very
And we
much,
should-
folks.
Everybody.